Welcome into Between the Pylons. I'm John Camacho.
And this is Jacob Waters.
And we are talking AFC North today. Got AFC East and AFC South, I think, already done. We're doing AFC North today. As you can tell, I'm wearing Big Ben, rest in peace. And he's not dead. He just stopped playing football. Oh, my God. He just stopped playing football.
I have Miles Garrett.
All right, we'll get right into it. This is a crazy division. Where do you want to start? You want to start with?
Ooh, there's
so many different
There's a lot of news, headlines,
landmines,
and landmines. Yeah, things that could get us kicked off the air. All sorts of reasons to talk about this division, and as much as we like to tiptoe around it, I do think that the biggest thing that affected the whole landscape of this division is Deshaun Watson.
Of course.
And the drama and all of that speculation that surrounds him and the Cleveland Browns right now. So I think that you and I both, we do a good job of making sure that we keep this morally separated from the fact that we are looking at this strictly from wins and losses in the NFL calendar and looking at the Browns going forward. I don't want to get into whether they are morally right or wrong for taking on this and Deshaun's baggage or anything of the sorts. I just feel like it's the safest way for us to play that.
Yeah, I mean, especially because we both think like we're pro Deshaun Watson off the field,
and we're avid happy ending massages out here, but guess 66 others weren't.
Yeah, fuck. That's how we're starting this shit.
Oh my God! Woo!
All right.
Well, we may have dropped under 1,000 subs now,
there we go.
And if we did, it's okay.
Yeah, hey.
I'll sue you.
All right. Speaking of lawsuits, Deshaun Watson has everything except for one lawsuit covered, paid for, everything done. We saw in like a press release when it was going on with the Miami Dolphins, and I'm kind of going all over the place here, but hear me out. There was an offer to these women that was basically going to be $100,000 to the 24 women, and they were gonna. This was back when the Dolphins were in the front seat of getting Deshaun Watson. The only reason the owner was willing to make that move was if all of the lawsuits were settled, right? So he sent that out, and then it came out that it was $100,000, basically going to be a couple million to sweep it under the rug. Gotta imagine as it played out, those women made the right call and waited and probably made more money. We'll never know. Realistically, we'll never know how much he paid. It doesn't matter. It probably wasn't more than the $40 million he was getting no matter what this year. Out 6 games. The NFL is appealing that. We don't know how that's going to go. It's still kind of up in the air. We feel differently in the fact that I still think it's a year. Like I'm still convinced the NFL is going to get to a year.
There's a little bit of news that came out today with what Goodell is seeking.
Did I miss that?
Goodell wants a year.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So he says based on the numerous like the times that this has happened, because under the NFL PAs and the contract that they've signed, the player conduct, that's what I'm looking for, allegations or accusations of this fall into a 6-game suspension. Now that is only specified one time though. So the judge looked at it and said, okay, well all of these wrongdoings go under this instance, which is a 6-game suspension. Goodell and company is thinking all of these wrongdoings times X amount of accusations coming forward should equal more than a 6-game. I think a lot of us in the NFL world feel the same about that. It's hard to have Zeke get suspended for these allegations, and that was one thing, and that got nowhere near the media attention that this is getting right now. I mean, this is on a national news. At one point, it was criminal. It's no longer, so I feel like that's why we can kind of take a back seat and we make our jokes about it and crap about it. Sure. That's the reason why. But I think it's going to be a year when it's all said and done.
Oh, you do? Okay. So
I 100% think it's going to be a year. In fact, I'll go as far to say that I think there's a little bit of NFL conspiracy here in saying, because the NFL came out and said that they support whatever the judge finds in these proceedings. So I think the judge got to take the cookie cutter playbook answer, and now Goodell gets to come in and play hero ball with a lot of the NFL world, because they have been under scrutiny for years with how they handle certain suspensions, going too hard here, not hard enough here at all. I mean, Josh Gordon suspended forever for smoking marijuana, while Aaron Rodgers is officially endorsed by taking his hallucinogenic drink. That happened yesterday, where the NFL said they have no problem with him doing that at all. So it's just, in so many different areas, they're not clear. But in this, I think Goodell's going to try to step up and advocate for the women and try to get that going.
Yeah, you would think, and then it's so strange. And I heard the excuse. I think Calvin Ridley is another one that people bring up. He's suspended for a year, and the logical and legit reason behind it is because in the NFL, CBA rules and all that, there's specific things that talk about gambling and what the consequences of gambling in the NFL are. So Calvin Ridley came up against a specific rule that there's no argument with.
Gray area in that.
Yeah, there as unfortunate as it is to say, there is gray area in allegedly raping 23 women. I don't mean that in how it sounds, but from the NFLPA is fighting on Deshaun Watson's behalf. Those are the allegations that are against Deshaun Watson. Yeah. It's fucked up that I have to say that. I think a year is too little. It should have been 2 years. It should have been what the baseball player got. What's his name?
Trevor Bauer.
Trevor
Bauer, all-star pitcher, is officially out, and he has nothing criminal against him. He has nothing civil. That was one altercation that went a little public, and the hardest part is just trying to get through all of it and figure out the truth and being able to get there. And that's thank God that is up to people way higher on the list than us and the common man, just because we just have to trust what the judgment's going to be and then go forward and see if we can let things lie. They say time heals all wounds, and time makes people forget in certain instances. I don't know what's going to happen with this going forward, though. And I was also shocked to see Goodell. A lot of people were saying that he would want to make this lie quick and not distract from. The NFL is monumental when it comes to the news and the revenue that it brings in. Do you want this story of Deshaun Watson still lingering over?
Yeah,
I don't know.
We took a break all off season. I didn't really, I would have loved for it to have already been dealt with and not really even had to talk about it now.
Exactly.
I can't imagine with the people who actually get paid to do this for a living, how tiresome, how stressful. Just how frustrating it has to be to talk about some shit that's not sports. We're going outside of the realm of sports at the end of the day. It just happens to be a sports-related player involved in all this. Let's. How do you want to? The
whole point. How do you want to operate off of Deshaun based on how we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns going forward? Because it heavily impacts.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. Let's just go based on the facts, what we know, what we've seen. We know that based from last year. The start of last year, they don't have their top 2 wide receivers. They don't have their top tight end, Austin Hooper, who I believe is in Tennessee now. Their number 2 running back wants out. It seems like all this, and obviously their star quarterback is gone as well.
In a trade as well, which I don't think is good.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. They did bring in Amari Cooper in a big trade. Jacoby Brissett, at the very least, is going to be playing 6 games. There's no doubt about that. And let's just, I guess, operate on that for now. I'm going to see, because I don't think there was when I was doing my research, but I'm going to see if there's an over-under on the Cleveland Browns here, just to see.
I'll be honest, if you can find one, you're basically gambling on what do you think's going to happen.
So it is here. Cleveland Browns regular season wins 8.5 is the line. I don't know. I don't know how to. I wouldn't even know how to start. The thing is, I want to say the over because realistically, they do have a pretty easy start to the schedule, which I can look that up as well. But beyond that, this is a good football team, regardless of quarterback.
And they really are. And once you
defense is great.
Regardless of quarterback, they had an injured Baker Mayfield, and they're still winning good quality football games for them. And I'm not going to say Jacoby Brissett is that. I don't think that he can be that. Yeah, exactly. He's a below average game manager at best. But Kevin Stefanski loves to run the ball downhill. They have 2 great running backs, an amazing defense. There's a world, and I am excited for the Week 1 rematch. Baker will be the starter.
Almost certainly, yeah.
And he's coming for blood.
You look at the start of their season, first 4 weeks, almost certainly all going to be Jacoby. I don't see them getting out of the first 4 weeks anything worse than 2-2. We start with Panthers, Jets, Steelers, Falcons. None of those teams are playoff teams, in my opinion. Not one of them. Jets are honestly, in my opinion, the best team out there, and that's all just hype and like my own, like I'm high on the Jets this year.
That's hope, yeah.
Yeah, that's just hope. But beyond that, obviously, Steelers are always going to be tough regardless, as long as Mike Tomlin's at the helm. But their roster isn't great. Falcons, I do believe, is going to be the worst team in the NFL this year. So I mean, yeah, that's very manageable. You get Chargers, Patriots, and then you get Deshaun possibly back for the Ravens on October 23rd, and they roll into probably the toughest part of their season with
it's
top
a damn
5 quarterback.
In October, early November, it's ugly right there. That's hard.
Yeah, and that's a guy coming off a year and a half of not playing football. So we have no way of knowing how that's going to look. We have no way of knowing how this entire team, how the locker room is going to do. I've always, like, when there's this much shit going on, I'm going to lean towards, it's not going to be great. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. I think Nick Chubb owners are going to be really excited. I am one, so I kind of am. Maybe I'm just high on my own supply a little bit with my guy, but I do think that's really the only positive I see from like a fantasy aspect or anything like that. I would bet the under on 8.5.
It's going to be tough because man, it sucks having to talk about Deshaun so much with this team because they do have a lot of talent. I really like a lot of their pieces too, but I can't help but think even if Deshaun's able to come back, I mean, this media circus that just surrounds these guys, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It's got to be draining morale-wise to think that, I don't know, you have certain teammates who may not buy into Deshaun as a leader when he comes back. You have certain people where Deshaun's going to have to fight for that locker room and see if the team can look past the altercation, let alone what's going to happen whenever you have the court of public opinion, which nowadays can be damning, especially when you have something like this. So he has a lot of weight on his shoulders that he's going to have to try to shed going forward. And I mean, you always want to hope for the best in just humanity overall and hope he can right the wrongs and go forward. But he's a damn good quarterback, and if he can come back to that top form that he left off at, this is a playoff team.
Which that part is a question. I think that's the other element of why I'm like leaning under and why I'm leaning.
You think there's any world he comes back and he's?
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a world. In any level,
I think he's
regardless of how. Regardless of how good he is, I do believe, and I think he's a star. I mean, he was a top 3 quarterback the year his team went 4-12. Like that's how good he was to make a 4-12 team, like to look good on a 4-12 team. That's impressive by itself, let alone the fact that he led the NFL in passing yards that year on an absolute garbage squad. With all that being said, awesome player. I do think there's going to be rust. I mean, there's just no way there's not early on.
I get that.
And I do think, I think this season's kind of a wash, and, this is a next year kind of thing. I don't see this team pushing for a deep playoff run. I'll put it that way.
I'll say this. I bet the suits aren't either. The higher-ups in the office, above general manager, all those guys,
they know what they did.
They're probably sitting up there high-fiving, knowing what's going on, thinking, if we're sitting here debating 6 versus a year, at the end of the day, they're going,
we got next year.
We did ours. Yeah. We traded away the Hall, knowing that there could be an indefinite ban looming. And I mean, the size of your nuts to be able to do that and sit down must hurt on a daily. That's wild to think that they made these moves, and it's unheard of to trade away that much with a guy who can never step foot on a field again. But they're all fine with it. Sure they are.
I think it's stressful. I think if they had known how much was going to come out, if they knew that more things were going to come out, they might not have done it. I don't know. As a Dolphins fan who, there was a time where I wanted Deshaun, not realizing how much was going on.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, we're soulless fans who want the player on the field. We don't really care who, or at least I'll put for myself. I'm a soulless fan who just wants the player on the field. I have Tyreek on my team, and I don't care. I don't think he's a good person off the field, but, it doesn't bother me. It is what it is. I'm not trying to be his friend. I want to be a fan of the team.
I do think it's a little unfair with certain altercations that happen with guys and how quick we are just to sue them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's how I justify a sport that I like to watch. I mean, that just is what it is. But yeah, I do think what from when they traded for him to now, I do think they probably they've had some rough nights. They've lost some sleep here and there. But yeah, at the end of the day, regardless, we know this team's going to be great next year. Let's move on from Deshaun. Let's look at the fantasy aspect before we move on, because we spent almost half of what the show's time frame was supposed to be on just one team.
It was it's major though.
Oh, absolutely. All right, Amari Cooper coming from Dallas. In season long, he's one of my least favorite wide receivers to get. Wouldn't care if he's there. He would have to be there in the 6th, 7th round for me to consider him. That's how much I just absolutely avoid him. would never be there. Obviously, he's a good player, puts up good numbers. Is it crazy to say 82 receptions for just under 1,000 yards? That's where I have him ranked out right now, and that comes out to just over 20% of the receiving targets and receiving yards for the season. Attack on an extra 6.5, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean it's scary to think of that, but with Jacoby Brissett in the first 6 games, I'm daring enough to say that I think it's 3 passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
In 6 weeks, no joke. So I mean, if you're looking at being a touchdown dependent fantasy market with these receivers, get out of the way. And Amari Cooper in Dallas would show up and he'd drop 180, and then the next 2 weeks he'd get you.
I call him Houdini. I really do. He's my favorite guy to bet on because you can definitely find those games where he's gonna ball out. But I mean, he's Houdini. He's so. It's just so common to see him go 1 for 12 in a random ass game in a big game.
I would stash him and keep him for a matchup dependent flex spot. And I know that sounds harsh, but I'm sorry, I just wouldn't feel confident and comfortable. The wide receiver game in the fantasy market it's just exponential right now with the different names that you can go get and plug and play. These young guys being able to step up. I cannot put all my eggs in one basket in the Browns passing game, and let alone Amari Cooper. There's just too many negatives there that line up for me. I'll go find someone else, like you said, 6th, 7th round.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Last, a couple other guys. Nick Chubb, I think we all know is going to be a stud. I have him penciled in for just over 1,300 rushing yards and 9.5 touchdowns, getting about 50% of the load, basically, of all the rushing yards. And I do think this will be a run first team. That crazy, too much, too little for a guy, going into what, 26, 27?
Yeah, I think it might be maybe 200 rich for me, and I would give the other 200 to Kareem. But there's a lot of stuff where, I mean, if Kareem's as upset as he is, and it sounds like he's pretty damn upset because he either wanted to get paid and get re-signed or get out so he can showcase his skills. I mean, I can't blame him.
Yeah.
He's a really, really good running back sitting behind Nick Chubb, who is a better running back.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to get paid like a backup. He knows his worth to this system, and hopefully the Browns should recognize that too.
Absolutely.
Nick Chubb's dynamic, but the both of them together is what makes that really scary.
Agreed. Last guy I want to touch on, Donovan Peoples-Jones is a deep type of player, and it's so tough for the wide receiver too, a young guy coming out of Michigan, I think late round pick, but he was really only a late round pick because of off the field issues. He should have been somewhere in that 2nd to 3rd round range, but I think he was drafted in the 6th, has climbed up the roster, was the number 1 at one point last year just because of injuries. I have him penciled in for 70 receptions, 682 yards, just under 5 touchdowns, and I do my stuff by percentages, so it's a little different there. I do have him as that number 2 wide receiver on the team, sharing a little bit of the workload with David Njoku and, David Bell, who was I think their 3rd round wide receiver this year, Harrison Bryant, guys like that. Crazy, too much, too little? Good number 2 option late?
That's wild. I mean, not wild, I would say. If you project him to be the wide receiver too, reception-wise, it's rich just looking at it, but go for it.
You don't like that one, huh?
No, I mean, I like Donovan Peoples-Jones. I'm just operating off of the full year, and if Jacoby Brissett is under center, I think everybody in here is just getting tanked.
Takes a hit.
Major hit. I don't trust that man to throw for more than 180, maybe a handful of times.
Yeah. I got you. I feel that. I maybe have the receptions a little bit too high for what his yards are, but that's kind of where I'm at. And I do like talking to you about stuff like this, because this isn't my final draft. This is
of course. And like I said, I understand where it's coming from. It just depends. The Browns are so hard to do because of the quarterback situation.
Gun to your head, over under 8.5 wins.
Under.
Under, yeah. I think under that in my head I would too.
Yep, I'm gonna put 7 and 10.
Yeah, and no way would I ever bet on that. I don't know about you, but I would.
Not with that. I'm not going to bet on a criminal thing at this point. Suspension wise.
All right. Next team I want to talk about, the team I do think should be the favorite to win the division. I don't know if they are.
You got to be talking about Baltimore. Right?
I am talking about Baltimore. I do think they're the best team in this division right now, and it's tough because we are talking, but we have the Cincinnati. We have the Super Bowl appearing Cincinnati Bengals in there. But I really believe, this is my logic behind it. If Ryan Tannehill doesn't throw that interception, essentially that 3rd interception of the game where he pushed the ball down the field, it was a bad call, bad throw, and they lose that game, which they probably were going to. They were able to move the ball in that game. we're not talking about Cincinnati as the favorite for the division. We're talking about Cincinnati as a really, really like upstart team. We're talking about them as like a high upside team that like could go far in the playoffs. We're not talking about them as a team that, hey, can they repeat and make it to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
I just think I think like it's so hard, like one game,
we
one
got so
one play
into this. Oh my God, the Bengals are upsetting some guys too.
Yeah.
We just crowned them as the dynasty because they have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Don't get me wrong, phenomenal talent, and they're going to be there for years to come, pushing year in and year out. But the Baltimore Ravens and what they've built from their coach to just the bones of that team with Lamar Jackson leading it, they're getting overlooked a lot.
I expected to get a little bit of pushback on that. I thought you might be going Cincinnati.
I saw Ravens at 10.5, and at plus money, I would smash that.
Really? Okay.
I am 100% in on the Lamar Jackson hype train, as I am every single year. I think he is as dynamic of a playmaker as what I've ever gotten to see in my life. And yes, I don't like some of the weapons that they've surrounded him with, but they've rebuilt this offensive line. They love to be able to run the ball. J.K. Dobbins had an average yards per carry of it was like 5.6 before he got hurt. Nobody else in the NFL was even close to that when it comes to a running back. I'm here for it. Defense, they always get these young studs that drop in the draft, and they bring them in and they say, you don't want them, we'll take them and we'll put them on the field, and they're going to be some thumpers. I've seen Kyle Hamilton getting burned a few times, but he's not going to be a coverage safety. He's out there for run support. I like it.
I really like that. I was okay, so I'm pulling it up. I wanted to guess the line here with Lamar Jackson on his rushing total, his rushing yards total. What do you think the line is?
750.
I think that's the farthest you've been off so far. That is 900.
Wow.
Yeah, 900. It's a lot.
No, I mean that's 150.
150. Okay, fair enough.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah,
750 does seem like a lot, and really, I thought that was a lot. I have him 863, so like I'm not that far off. Seems like a lot for a quarterback, obviously, but it's Lamar Jackson. So I mean,
if he hits his passing line and that line over, basically they're saying, but he's up there for MVP every single year. That's
yeah. I mean, he certainly, if he plays his best, he absolutely can.
Yeah, that's the way that he plays.
What do you think his passing that's passing touchdowns? Let me find his passing yards here. What do you think his passing yards are?
34.5. 35. It can't be more than that, right? Because I give him about 4,500 all-purpose yards.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm struggling to find it here. I don't see it. I have touchdowns. I don't have passing yards.
Well, they probably wouldn't put it out there.
Yeah, probably not. What do you think the touchdowns are? Just because I have it up here right now.
Passing?
Passing touchdowns, yes.
17. No, 20. 22.
24 and a half.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right in that range.
My way up. I mean, his running.
Let me get there.
He's still gonna get it.
Yeah, that's weird. They don't have the passing yards. That's interesting. All right. Anyway, I was just kind of curious. Yeah, I think 3,000, 3,200 is what I have him at. I don't think that's crazy. Well, I know
statistically, you have Mark Andrews out here as a damn first-round pick, though. I'll say that. And a lot of people do. You're not wrong for doing that.
Well, there's nobody. Okay.
He is by far his favorite and most secure and dependent target in this. And they have yet to find a guy who can just be a constant wide receiver.
So in my notes, it even says, like, go back and look at this. Like, am I too high on this team overall? Because my whole thing is what I do is I say, okay, this is how many yards the quarterback's going to throw for. So obviously the main guys on their team are going to get the majority of those yardage, and that's kind of how I do it percentage-wise. I do think Mark Andrews, like, he had a career year last year, and I do think it can go up just because, I mean, who else is there? I'm sorry, I'm not a Rashad Bateman guy. I'm not. And I gave him 63 and 835. So like I gave him, the wide receiver one numbers on the team, but beyond that, Devin Duvernay hasn't, like, I was a big fan of him coming out, hasn't really hit that mark. So I have him for 55, 751. Like that's a lot of yardage, kind of. I mean, that's a lot of, those are solid numbers. I feel like for a season, not world ending, not game breaking, but solid. And for a team that is run first, it does feel like a little bit too much. And Mark Andrews, by the way, for anybody, I don't know if you said it, 123 for 1367 and 11. That does seem a little high to me.
That's astronomical.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I mean,
that's a lot.
He's their version of Travis Kelce.
I gotta move that down a little bit, but he is, and I do believe. I will stand by the fact I think he's going to have a great year. Just looking at these numbers, you're right. I don't know if it was really late when I was doing this team's when I was rating these out or not, but yeah, that does seem a little bit too much.
I definitely think he hits 1,000.
Yeah,
1100s.
You think I'm crazy with J.K. Dobbins? I really like that one.
No, I've
JK
I've heard
solid.
so many good things about JK coming back. He was dynamic coming out of college. That's why I spat out that yards per carry. He had 5.6 yards per carry before he went down with this injury.
Yeah.
Assuming he's good to go, this team wants to run the ball. And knowing that he can run the ball and still not be the focal point of the running attack, that's the crazy part. And they need to run this read option.
Yeah, I have him down for just under 1,200 yards on the season. So, I mean, and, you know, a 1,000-yard rusher is a ridiculous number.
He goes in the 4th, 5th round. I 100% am confident in him being my RB2 on the year.
I would agree with 100%. That. Absolutely agree. And granted, like they've always been a team that does like to move the ball around a little bit, but I mean, Dobbins should be hitting his prime, coming off an injury. That's the scary part. But yeah, I do have him having a great rebound. Anywhere to go with this? Obviously, we both just said unanimously that we think Baltimore hits their over at 10.5, which is bold, I think, and saying they're the best team in the division.
I wish we had a little bit more to argue about on it, but
I thought we would. I thought it was going to be bold there.
I love the Cincinnati Bengals and the young pieces that they have up and coming. But I do think that with Baltimore last year, they were banged up. They were injured across the board, struggling to really get some just continuity with their team. If they can right the ship, I'm telling you, because it was one of those games where Cincinnati played them at home and beat the living shit out of them.
Yeah.
And that was when Cincinnati had their coming out party. It was just all downhill from there, full head of steam, carried them all the way to the Super Bowl from then on with that offense. It's going to be a fun game to watch offensively.
It's going to be super fun.
It's going to be fun.
And let me say,
Lamar Jackson is as dynamic as anyone.
Absolutely. And let me say, I don't have the Cincinnati Bengals being slouches. I think this is a fight all the way to the end. I do think Cincinnati is going to be awesome. I think Jamar Chase has an even better second year in the NFL, which I think I have him borderline the best wide receiver in the league statistically on my net, which I might need to bring that down a little bit just for those of you listening. 128 for 1,500 yards seems a little high, but that's a little bit bold, like I said. But I gave him about 30% of the market share, and that's kind of what it came out to.
Well, I think Burrow has the capability to throw for 5.
Yeah, I have him at 45, and I 100% believe he can throw for 5.
I think he will throw for 5. And I think the Bengals are going to be... so Ravens, 11-12 wins. Bengals, 10-11. I mean, I'm not saying that the Baltimore is just going to steamroll the competition here. I do think it line up 9 times out of 10 on Sunday, the Ravens end up walking away with the win. It just how it goes sometimes. Maybe not 9 times out of 10, but I mean, they have the odds in my favor.
Yeah.
But the Bengals, that offense isn't stopping for anyone. The defense, I find it a little sus, I'm not going to lie. I really do. I think that they have a lot of pieces that work for them, but... I mean, we have loudmouth is Eli Apple, right? And that's their loudmouth, basically. Who
is he still on the team? He might not be.
They ended up paying him because I saw Jamar clip from practice, and Jamar said he really pisses him off just because he gets under his skin. So they paid him a little bit, But it's like I'm not really buying the overall defensive talent as much as it is just the product of and I think they're going to win games offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, and I think the what you look at with Cincinnati, I mean, you kind of have to agree with that. I do like their defensive coordinator. You look at them coming out of halftime in the third quarter, from week 11 to the Super Bowl, gave up 10, 20, 23 points in the third quarter. So that's pretty impressive. Just the third quarter. I mean, so their halftime adjustments are awesome. Their coaching is pretty good defensively. But I agree. I mean, when you look at this team,
and Trey Hendrickson coming up.
Oh, absolutely. I think looking at his stats, he had, I'm going to pull it up here just because ridiculous numbers when I was looking at Trey Hendrickson, his impact on the field. I'm not able to, I can't get it.
Considering the Saints let him go, though, and the Bengals were able to take him up for what they did,
Trey Hendrickson accounted for 32% of pressures and 41% of sacks when he was on the field last year for the Bengals defensive production. That is just absolutely ridiculous numbers. But looking at this team, they came into the offseason, they said, okay, we're going to fix one thing and one thing only, and that's going to be the offensive line. When you got Alex Cappa, Lil Collins, Ted Karras, starters all across the board, basically rehash their entire offensive line right there, and did leave a defense that, yes, there are pieces there, but it's not fully formed. And in the draft, they went and drafted pretty much all defense except for one offensive lineman in the 4th round. Got safety, got corner, got D tackle, and then some late round picks on another safety and DN. That's a team they're telling us what they knew they needed to work on.
Yeah.
They're showing us and if you really look at the team dynamic as a whole, they way outperformed what was expected. expected.
The scary part is that they were still able to be competitive in a game where they got sacked a playoff record 9 times. We were at that game. Tennessee Titans brought him down 9 times, and yet
they won.
They still found a way.
Yeah.
So keeping that offensive line intact and only getting better, if they can just keep Burrow's jersey clean, it's only going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is their Super Bowl window. Like, there's no other way to say it. You're spending $20 million in cap towards Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. Your core 3 on offense. Obviously, you're spending a good bit towards Joe Mixon too. I think they're paying 3rd or 4th most towards the running back room in the NFL, but like 3rd most. But you know, I think at the end of the day, that running back room is good if they have an offensive line that can block.
It's a good young offense. I just think the overall crowded field in the AFC is just going to be overwhelming.
So you're saying not make the playoffs, or
I mean. What's that stat? I don't know it off the top of my head, but there's something that is just damning about first-year teams that push to that Super Bowl, like Jacksonville that year. There's been a few other teams that do it. There's a substantial drop-off that means that they don't make the playoffs next year, and that they definitely don't win the division. So I'm buying into the division one.
Yeah.
I do think that they make the playoffs here, but don't put a gun to my head and make me list them, because, I mean, that's hard to do. That AFC West that we're going to get to next could very well put out 4 teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It'd be ridiculous, but yeah, it's very possible. There's going to be a team in the AFC West, no matter what happens, that probably deserved to be a playoff team and would have been a playoff team in the NFC.
Are the Bengals better than the Bills?
No, they're not.
Better than the Ravens?
Obviously, we're saying no. Yeah, but I do think that's close.
Are they better than the new era Broncos?
I mean, yes. I'm going to say yes, just because we haven't seen it yet. No.
Okay, they beat them twice last year, so I know we're going to piss off Bengals fans, but I do agree. I do think the Chiefs are better. Raiders, bottom of the AFC West.
Yeah, they're probably better than the
Chargers.
No.
Titans.
So they're polar opposite teams. That's tough to. I would say top to bottom, no, they're not better. But
last one, Colts.
Again, polar opposite teams, top to bottom. Yeah,
it's so
I'm gonna
tough.
say yes, but it's tough. Yeah,
it's so tough to think that there's going to be how many of these teams win-loss sit between 8 to 11? Y'all got to figure something out, because that's the differential in you making it not.
I mean, maybe I'm a fanboy, but I feel like you were insulting not to at least throw the Dolphins in there. I think they are better than the Dolphins.
So
but that's another team in the AFC that their roster is good enough to compete. We just, we haven't seen it. I think it's interesting. A couple more things, just stats that I saw that I want to throw out there. Just how important fixing that offensive line was. This is a ridiculous stat in my opinion. Joe Mixon's yards before contact was 29th in the NFL, meaning that he was the 29th, the amount of yards he was able to get before contact was 29th in the NFL. That is a terrible stat for the offensive line. But yards after contact, 5th in the NFL. So, I mean, he was making it work. Too. Yeah, he was making it work with an absolutely awful offensive line. I do think that is good for Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon also a guy that, they really haven't made him be a 3-down true workhorse. They've put other guys in there to at least, spell him, which I do think, as fantasy lovers and things like that can get frustrating at times, but it's the same reason Nick Chubb hasn't slowed down yet, because he's had Kareem Hunt. Joe Mixon, it doesn't seem like, maybe different guys, but it doesn't seem like he's slowed down yet, because we've had, lesser talent behind him, but they've at least put them in. They put the Samaje P. Ryans in on 3rd down. They put other guys in to spell him and give him, make that contract last. Make
Fresh
him,
legs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very important.
I mean, we're seeing what happened in...
I'm looking at your numbers here.
Sorry, yeah.
No, you're good. I just want... There's a spot where I'm mock, and I am constantly force-fed this player, but I just don't want it. And I need you to be able to convince me otherwise. It's T. Higgins making this next jump into... I would say that tier 2 wide receiver range is where he is force-fed to me. He is among names like Scary Terry, DK Metcalf, a low-end Mike Evans, Keenan Allen type. It's right there with all of those names, and Deontay Johnson. I just don't feel safe doing it. Should I?
Yeah, I do think so. I think T. Higgins is a guy who, he's going to get undervalued. Great year 2. Like literally, take Jamar Chase off this team, or put the story of T. Higgins in literally almost any other situation, and I think we'd be higher on him than we are on this team.
Yeah.
Just because we have a legitimate top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, a guy who could transcend the sport level talent, right? And Jamar Chase, that's how good he was. Broke a record that hadn't been broken for years until Justin Jefferson did it, and then broke it the next year. But you take a guy who had a good rookie season. I think 800 yards, something like that, a solid rookie season, and then builds on that for a 1,000-yard season with great success and great rapport with his quarterback going into year 3. Mm-hmm. I mean, the story of that sounds great on paper, right? And I know I didn't give as much detail as maybe I could have just because I don't have it right in front of me. But I do think he's a guy who is a budding star. They just have a really, really good 1-2 punch, and Jamar Chase is a little bit better. I name the guys that are going around him, and I'll tell you who I would take first. Let's play it that way.
Yeah.
Just looking at just for those, I have him mocked right now, which I think I am going to taper this down a little bit. 87 for just over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's about where I have him right now. I have him getting about a little over 20% of receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns on the season. So like a really solid wide receiver 2 performance there. But just the names that you picked out, I'll go one for one and say who I would draft over who. And if I can give you a second.
Terry goes right next to him.
I'm taking T. Higgins. Yeah, I'm taking T. Higgins. I like I know the quarterback. I know the offense. I know what I'm getting with T. Higgins. I would take that over Scary Terry, who is the number one. I think you could. I'd probably say Scary Terry's the better wide receiver, but I don't think in a better position.
Well, yeah, T. Higgins has about a round on him on ADP. A.J. Brown.
I do take T. Higgins. I hope I'm not being biased here, but I think I would take the guy in a situation that I believe in.
I think AJ is a better receiver.
Again, we're not arguing better receiver.
No,
I'm saying fantasy. I do think he puts up more stats. AJ Brown going to a new system that last year was run heavy, and I do expect to be a lot of the same.
Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking T. Higgins. Deontay Johnson was a product of a good player, but like his stats were way like inflated because he was a product of a quarterback that just couldn't move the ball down the field, and he was getting and Deontay Johnson is a great route runner who can get open in a phone booth basically.
Keenan Allen.
I'll take Keenan Allen over.
I have to find myself though making sure that I'm not being hypocritical because I look at Keenan and Mike Williams and I look at that dynamic duo. Why am I so turned off by the idea of having a T. Higgins in that area where I'm okay with a Mike Williams? It's just not fair.
Well, T. Higgins is much better than Mike Williams.
He is.
I will say
for
that.
Sure. I'm just saying the Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Having a piece of that pie doesn't scare me as much as having the Cincinnati Bengals pie.
I think it's because Tyler Boyd, which I have Tyler Boyd taking a step back this year.
There, and he's agreed to take a step back.
Yeah, I think he takes a little bit of a step back statistically this year.
He's
so
a veteran
I think
at 26. He's still young overall.
Yeah, he's gone through the ringer
Michael
too.
Pittman Jr. I know we both unanimously agree on this. What?
Yeah, I'm taking Pittman over.
I'm sorry, I had to think about it.
I think Pittman's a tough one because I think the broader scope of people would scoff at that because T. Higgins is probably a bigger name just going back to college, but Pittman really came on last year, and he's the wide receiver 1 on a good team, so I like that.
Just a few more, and then I'll leave you alone. It's DJ Moore. I know you love him.
TJ's better, and again, I've taken T. Higgins over a handful of guys that I do think are better. Fuck.
Yeah.
I'm taking DJ. That's close.
I would take DJ.
I think I'm taking DJ. That's tough.
I would take the number 1 versus the number 2 in a good passing attack. I would take the number 1 in a bad one and just hope that I can.
Yeah. Well, on a team that I think is going to be bad
There's
too.
Been people saying DJ Moore breakout for.
Yeah,
are we on the 4th year now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because the talent's there. It's just he hasn't had a consistent, great connection with his quarterback.
No, it's completely true. Last one, and you might have to fight some bias here. Jalen Waddle.
Oh, I don't think it's close. I'll take T all day.
Tyreek.
I'm low on Tyreek.
I know. That's why I brought them both up.
Yeah, you take Tyreek. You take Tyreek. I don't feel good. I do think, man, okay, so we're in a keeper league, so I want to preface that, like, just doing mocks in our keeper league where you can keep 3 players, so essentially the first 3 rounds are gone other than just a handful of guys that fall through the cracks. I'm sitting there at the back of the first round, and those are the kind of the names that you look at. I'm at the back of the first and the top of the second, so, like, if I'm going wide receiver in that range, those are the guys you're looking at, and it's like, man, Tyreek at it's the 9th pick in the first round, and then T. Higgins with the 3rd pick in the second. Like, to me, that sounds really good on paper. Really, like, I would be very, very happy to come out of that. Obviously, I'm not the biggest Tyreek fan, but I do think he'll be, consistently putting up 15 to 20 points.
Fair. Just was feeling it out just because it's like
it's tough.
I see that name a lot, and it's like should I be okay with it?
Yeah, I think by this time next year we could have a very different feel of T. Higgins. Which I mean that's
take Tyler
that's fair
Boyd
to
out of
say.
that room, and I'm 100% invested in this.
Yeah.
But
I think I like Tyler Boyd being there. I think you need another guy that
I like it for overall X's and O's. I'm talking about fantasy.
Yeah, I get that. All right, we are already going over.
Pittsburgh. It's okay.
Let's get to Pittsburgh. Yeah, there's no rules here. Pittsburgh Steelers. It's interesting because like they have the most going on, but also maybe the least fun to talk about, at least from my perspective, because like they're gonna win 8 games. They're gonna win 8 or 9 games. I know that to be true. I have so little expectation that they wouldn't. Man, I gotta fix my stats on here because their numbers are way.
You're good.
low.
You're good. I have a lot of camp news.
Okay, let's talk about it.
A lot of beat writers have been keeping track of the numbers. And can you name the top 2 wide receivers performance-wise? This is going off of everybody. Full scrimmages, everybody.
My guess is George Pickens is in that conversation.
George Pickens is number 1. And It's not close.
I mean, I'm still going to go Chase Claypool, but I could be wrong on
Calvin
that.
Austin.
Calvin Austin?
They have outperformed Chase Claypool and,
Really?
what's his face? Deontay Johnson.
Wow.
Deontay's been struggling with drops, is what.
Well, he has his whole career, yeah.
And they've also said that they've done so. Pickett was getting first team for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph is 100% the QB1. They've said he's commanded the team. He has thrown for 11 touchdowns versus
Over
0
Mitch
interceptions
Trubisky?
over Trubisky.
Okay.
Statistically, it's
Yeah,
straight
that doesn't.
statistically.
Yeah.
It was they've done at the end of every practice they do the live 11 on 11.
Mm-hmm.
Mason Rudolph has 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. There's nobody better with 5 touchdowns versus anything close on the picks. The others are over 6. Pickett's. They said Pickett has had flashes of why you draft him, and then others that he needs more time.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that's expected for
Yeah.
that.
Rookie guy going into a tough situation.
It scares me because it's like, is Mason Rudolph developing in this system? Exactly. It's like I've
seen enough. Yeah, and granted, I always speak ill of fans that always say, "Oh, I've seen enough. I'm good. I don't believe in him." I have actually seen enough.
I think it's safe to say that Mason Rudolph has been in that system long enough to where he should be able to dominate a practice. I have no doubt in my mind that he could run the drills the correct way, and then whenever he gets to there with no pressure on game day against a team that hasn't really fully scouted him as they do, where he could shred it up.
What's the percent chance that Mason Rudolph is actually a starter week 1?
I think he's going to get it.
Oh no! I think I would put that so low, like 5 to 10% chance. There's no way.
I think it's Mason Rudolph.
There's no way. I think it's Mitch Trubisky's. I think it's Mitch Trubisky. I really do. And I thought it was Kenny Pickett early on until Mike Tomlin kind of came out and said like, we're not starting him. We have no interest in starting a rookie year 1. Like, that's just how he is, and I kind of believe him.
I think Rudolph versus Trubisky. I like Trubisky and what the potential could be in trying to revitalize his career, but based off what I've heard, it's Rudolph.
So this is a tough team. So that's the quarterback battle. We'll leave it there. No, we're not touching any of those guys in fantasy. I'm gonna do a guess the line on Najee Harris, which I don't know if it's there. I'm gonna look it up right now. But talk me through your thought process and where you're at with
Najee. It's this constant love hate between us, especially you guys in our fantasy league, having to talk about Najee Harris and whether his name is up there with Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, and the rest of them. And it's tough.
Let's keep this on like a global or like on a world or nationwide scale. Like I don't think anybody. I know we have a couple people in our friend group that are outliers that think that he's in that conversation. I think
a lot of the fantasy community does too, though.
Okay, well, fantasy wise, I think talent wise, nobody would say that, right?
Me and you are the minority here.
Okay, well maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I do think we're the minority.
Guess the line. Where do you think his line's at?
I mean, if Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry's at 1,300, I think they're going to put him at 12.
They got him at 11. Yeah, they got him at 11.
He said that he'd run the ball 500 times this year if he had to.
Yeah.
With a smile on his face.
He's a workhorse, man. There's no doubt about that. So here's my thing with that. First of all, it's tough because the offensive line wasn't good last year. So, like, I don't want to completely shit on a guy. But the Steelers running backs averaged 3.7 yards per carry with a 33% success rate last year. I mean, that's not good. That ranked 29th and 28th in the NFL last year. Like, that's That's tough. And this is all despite the fact that they saw the third lowest rate of 7-man boxes.
Henry don't get that.
They wanted him to throw the ball. They wanted him to run the ball. Run the ball, please. Run him. And stepping away from the stats, just watching Najee Harris, by the way, I tried to trade for him in fantasy. Love him as a fantasy out. I have him getting over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. So, I'm not saying he's a bad fantasy option. I think he's a great fantasy option. Anybody who is a workhorse.
He's a workhorse.
Yeah, you're going to be a great fantasy option. I watched him run too many times last year and thought, God, he just doesn't have that, that quick foot. To me, it was just like that explosiveness that you need to see right out of the gate.
It's not fair
just
to
didn't
say
like it.
because the offensive line was bad, and there were a lot of times where he was getting hit behind the line, and it's so hard to knock a guy for that. But we did just praise a guy in Joe Mixon for having that same stat where he's getting hit behind the line, and you're still making those plays. I just have gotten in so many arguments over if you take away the passing dump-off, aging Big Ben numbers, it drastically changes Najee's fantasy outlook. And I don't know if they're going to do that. I understand a year one quarterback might have that same type of codependent dump-off relationship there.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if wins and losses, that's what they're going to really try to drive home.
Yeah, I think this is a team that wants to win, 13-10 every game. I really feel like that's kind of the kind of team we're looking at this year.
Tomlin loses no sleep over it.
Yeah, I mean they're going to have a great defense. They're going to be coached very, very well defensively, and their defense should still be good. The offense is going to be struggling a little bit. I certainly believe that, but there are pieces, and you look at Chase Claypool as a guy who didn't make that year 2 jump that we expected. His rookie numbers were damn near identical to DK Metcalf's rookie numbers, and I was one who was saying
touchdowns regress. That's what
it's regret, but just in general, across the board, receptions, targets, and yards, they were all very similar to DK that year 1, and I did expect a DK level jump in year 2. I was wrong; that didn't happen. And this year, now I'm sitting here saying, okay, 59 touchdown or 59 receptions, 600 yards, something in that ballpark is kind of like where I'm at with that, and that feels very low. But that's just kind of where we have to be right now, and I do think that I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing all plays out.
I'm going to say draft George Pickens because you can get Pickens at a discount price, and I have heard so many good things out of camp about how he plays, how he attacks the ball.
Juju's gone, so he can be that number 3 now, right? I think Claypool on the outside, Deontay Johnson inside.
He could
Pickens
rise
could be
to
on
a
the
higher level than that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm always down to trust a Steelers drafted wide receiver. They're just so good at drafting wide receivers. And George Pickens was a dude I think a lot of people really liked and thought had a chance to go.
Other than his
surprise.
attitude, that's
absolutely. And injuries. I think those were the 2 main issues there. It's tough fantasy wise. Aside from Najee Harris, we know we all want Najee, and fantasy wise, I don't think anybody would be upset. Who is the guy that you think, regardless of value, who's the guy you think has the best year fantasy wise?
Deontay.
You do think it's Deontay
I
still?
think Deontay with the reception numbers, but I will say this: I think George Pickens is going to put up damn good numbers.
I get that.
I really do.
Pat Freiermuth, is he somebody you think about?
Super good sleeper tight end.
Yeah.
If you're one of those guys who is comfortable with letting the top 5 guys go, take Freiermuth late. I loved him coming out of school. I remember I always fall in love with some damn tight end for some reason, and I fell in love with Freiermuth. I fell in love with Cole Kmet the year before, and guess what? 2 tight ends I'm going to take late. Both of them. Give me both of them.
I completely agree, man. I do think it's we're getting in that range where they could be damn good. I think Pat Freiermuth showed enough to me okay, this could be a year 2 jump, year 2 jump.
Could be. Should be.
All right, we are long on this episode. We will get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. Well, do you have anything else? I should have stopped there.
No.
All right. Peace.
7.